Welcome to the hottest real estate topics on the planet, keeping you up to date with all the creative ways to buy and sell real estate without bank qualifying, so anyone can build real income starting today. Here is another great show with Dealmaker Bill and Pete the Rookie.
All right, here we are at another episode of Flipping Houses for Rookies.
Well, you sound awake today.
It's hard to believe that I've done that 415 times, huh, Peter?
Well, you must know how to do it really well by now. Good morning
so here we are.
Hello to everybody.
Yay. We're on podcast number 415, 415, and the title of today's podcast is A Remarkable but Invisible Creative Real Estate Loophole Revealed.
Okay.
And here is the description. Exposed. The invisible loophole that is right under everyone's nose. Creating wealth. In a world where every guru out there is claiming to have the secret sauce, be prepared to discover the obvious that no one talks about. But if used, most likely will bring you 5-figure paychecks on demand. What if I showed you how to lock in your profits before committing to purchase? Would this eliminate the fear of getting stuck with deals that suck? And here's the kicker. This strategy isn't just for big players. In fact, it works better for rookies who want or need dough within 30 days. Also, I have seen others make quantum leaps with regard to reshaping some lives. Plus, this technique works in all markets. Actually, the hotter the market, the better. It is truly the ultimate equalizer in the real estate game. Be part of the elite group of investors who have been quietly amassing fortunes using this technique. But I caution you, this information is highly addictive. Once you hear it, you'll never look at real estate the same way again. Here we go.
All righty.
Okay, so a little bit of housekeeping in action. So obviously we record this podcast every Thursday morning, 9:30 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. If you would like to join the podcast or be part of the podcast, aka asking questions or be part of our conversation, you can go to we live stream it on Thursday morning while we're recording it, and we actually upload it to the syndication sites, all the podcast sites on Monday. But if you would like to be part of the conversation on Thursday morning, you can go to Facebook, you can go to YouTube. In YouTube, you can type in Flipping Houses for Rookies, or you can also type in Creative REI Replay. It's on 2 channels there. And you can go to LinkedIn. And if you're on any one of those platforms, wherever they allow you to type, you go ahead and ask your question, and I will answer it if it's pertaining to the podcast. Don't forget to subscribe to us and like us and leave a comment. Also, if you have other questions further than the podcast, you can go to flippinghousesforrookies.com. Top right-hand corner, there's a support link that comes to Peter and I will answer, or Peter will answer your questions there. And lastly, if you want to be part of our mastermind group for free, you can go to WhatsApp Messenger and look for Flipping Houses for, I'm sorry, that's not right. WhatsApp Messenger is
Let's talk
real estate. Yeah, I think there's 100 and something people in that group that are all masterminds and all talking about creative real estate. Okay, glad that's out of the way. So here we go, Peter.
Okay, Bill.
It gets revealed today. Yes, it does.
You've been holding out on us for 415 podcasts. And me, finally.
Evidently.
Spill.
What I'm talking about is how to lock in gargantuan profits before you purchase real estate today.
Ooh, that sounds smart.
And as we start talking today about this, I don't want our listeners to believe it's something they've never heard or something they've already heard, and just dismiss it. Okay, because what I'm going to do today is it's taken me 414 podcasts to have these realizations. Actually, to be honest with you, what's happening is my partner Sean Shirk and myself are working on Creative REI Reply stuff, and we're making webinars. Should I say I'm making webinars? He's telling me what to do. It doesn't always work that way, but especially with me. But it's forcing me to look at what we do. I mean, it's like forcing me to look at things I haven't looked at before, including I've been doing with our list of non-buyers and buyers of Creative REI Reply. I've been surveying them. And I've been getting feedback on what's important to them, or to because I think those represent our listeners today.
Yeah.
All right. So it's kind of funny whenever I do this. I have to put a policy in that I do this once a quarter, or at least twice a year, because it is extremely revealing. Because things that you and I take for granted are not always true. So I love the feedback because, especially here at the podcast, I wish people would send us support tickets and say, hey, I'd love to hear this about creative real estate. And then I would gladly write a podcast on it. Like, for example, one of the things that I went through, I saw the other day, which I'm going to be working on today, but was somebody's telling me, I had a couple people respond with, they feel like they're having trouble with the objections on the slot deal. Which tells me that probably they're not using the script, because the script handles most of the objections. But I thought that was pretty clever, because I should write a book on what the objections are. But I don't want to go deep south, because when I do something like that, I disappear for 2-3 days and and I get stuck in it. And anyway, so I'm off topic. Okay, so today, first, I want to talk about something way too many have attention on. Way too many rookies or real estate investors have attention on. And that is getting money to buy deals. So if you've been on Bill's Planet, a.k.a. here on the podcast and then on my emails and in my webinars and, in Creative REI Reply, in our training, anything like that, right? You'll soon realize that that's not a big deal. But there are a lot of people that run into sellers that say they want all cash.
Right.
And what that does is it makes you believe that that's the only type of customer out there, is people that want all cash.
Well, if I or you were selling, or anybody was selling something, what's the first thing we want? We want our hands filled with money right now. Like, why wouldn't anybody want that? But that's just a starting point.
It's funny you bring that up, because when I used to own my dealership, I had a auto repair facility, gas station, and a dealership.
Yeah.
I used to talk to my salespeople about this, because we would do sales meetings all the time.
Sure.
Which, by the way, is where I learned how to deal with a lot of this objection stuff, because it was in the car business.
That sounds brutal. If you can survive that, that sounds like the training ground.
I owned it for 27 years, but the point is this: I used to train my sales guys that the buyer only has limited knowledge. Right? They don't understand the car business. So the only common ground is money. Like, they only know how to negotiate that. They don't know that they can change interest rates. They don't know that they can change term, the length. They don't know that they can change down payment. They don't know that there's other things to negotiate because they're not trained that way. Right?
Sure. Makes sense.
So what happens is they go after the one thing that they know,
Yeah, how much?
right? Which is money.
Yeah, how much?
Right? So I feel like that happens here in this industry because rookies don't know that or I shouldn't say rookies. I said that wrong. I'm sorry. Buyers don't know that when the rookie's talking to them, or sellers don't know when the rookie's talking to them, that there are other negotiating points, which is why 97% of people talk about money. They ask 97% of the people selling a house ask for money.
Yeah.
Right. This is kind of like you have a conversation with somebody and you really don't know them, and you talk about weather talk. Right. It's because the weather is common knowledge between you and everybody else. I mean, the weather is the weather. So you talk about weather because they don't know. Like for example, what do you do for a living, Bill? Oh, I buy and sell real estate. Oh, you're a realtor.
Sure.
Right? That's their first thing. I didn't say that. I didn't say I buy. I said I buy and sell real estate. Realtors don't buy and sell real estate. So they obviously, first of all, have a misunderstanding of what a realtor is, because most realtors, some will personally, but they're not made to buy and sell. They're made to help the transaction, but not buy and sell. Anyways,
Right.
So it's common ground. So what I'm saying is, often our rookies feel like getting the money to buy their deals is a barrier, right? They have a lot of attention on that.
Sure.
But today I'm going at this solution like we've never talked about it to date. Okay, because I just want you to hear what I have to say today, because I think, obviously I'm biased, I wrote it, but I think you're going to really understand it by the time we get it done today, right? I want our listeners to put the money aspect of buying deals into two buckets. Now, this is new. This is so I can illustrate how to think about, or how I think about it. I didn't even realize it until, like I said, I've been kind of soul searching a bit, right? So all of our listeners after today should put money in two buckets when they're looking at properties. So one is an equity partner, and two is a debt partner.
Wow, that's interesting sounding.
Now, let me explain why I want to do this from now on.
Okay.
Equity partners mean you structure the deal so that your job as the rookie or as the investor, which we don't really use that word because we like to use the word real estate entrepreneur, because to me, investor means you have a chunk of dough and you're looking to get a highest rate of return for it.
Sure, strictly
That's
speaking, yeah, that would be.
That's an investor, right?
Yeah.
Where a real estate entrepreneur is much more than the money, because a transaction, when you're doing a real estate transaction, it is way more than money. Money is the littlest piece of the aspect. And most use that as the hardest stumbling block, right? So what I'm saying is that I like to call us as real estate entrepreneurs, because we have all the available resources and knowledge to be able to get through the entire transaction. In other words, we're like glorified consultants, right?
Right.
Because it's everything. It's finding the deal. It's talking to the seller. It's making sure the seller gets everything they want. It's making sure the buyer gets everything they want. The money guy gets everything they want. You get everything that you want. It's all the paperwork. It's the due diligence. It's all the hiccups and all the problems that happen from step one all the way to closing, right? So an entrepreneur is a lot more than the money guy, right?
Yeah, it makes sense, because there's a lot of steps in a transaction.
So an equity partner means you structure the deal so that your job is to bring the deal to the table, right? And I'm going to explain all this a little bit more, right? And your partner finances the deal with the agreement of like a 50-50 split, right? Or a 60-40 split, maybe even a 70-30 split. But the point is you bring the deal to an equity partner means you bring the deal to the table, they bring the money. AKA, You do all the work, and they put up the money.
Mm-hmm. And the
That's
money
common.
and the money's in the house. You mean because we're talking about a house.
No, I'm just talking about a equity partner, like a
Oh,
partner.
in general.
Just in general.
Oh,
like
sure.
Suppose you have a
Yeah.
subject to deal and you need 10 grand. The partner's going to supply the 10 grand.
Yeah, that's true. Okay. Yes, some people have money, but they don't have the expertise, or they don't want the aggravation of doing the work. So you do the work, they do the money between you. You're sharing the equity, which is profits.
Right. So I did that my first, I don't know. I did a bunch of deals that way with my partner.
Yeah.
Right. So now a debt partner, so we have equity partner and a debt partner. A debt partner lends money in exchange for an interest rate. Now, debt partners charge 8% to 12%. Usually, there are other numbers out there, which is cheaper than giving up 50% of your deal. Right?
Yeah.
Or 50% of your profit.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So if you can swing the application approval process, which nowadays is a lot harder than ever before. I mean, when I first started, there was none of that. Hard money was real hard money. It was usually like one of my hard money lenders had just sold a trucking business for something like 10 or 15 million dollars.
Wow.
And he was truly he was a private money lender, but then got smart and turned into a hard money lender. And usually the difference between private money and hard money is private money will not charge you points, and they don't bash you over the head with all the nickel and dime stuff, right? There's not percentages of how much they'll lend and all that. So private lenders, once they get started and they tend to get, burned or stuck with houses, they start changing the rules, right? So does that make sense? Equity partner means you do all the work and your money guy or girl brings the money and you split profits.
Mm-hmm.
Where a debt partner, you just pay them the interest. They give you the money, you pay them the interest, and there you go, right?
Okay.
All right. Here's why I'm chattering about this today. What if we could be an equity partner with our seller?
Mm-hmm. Sure.
But have 0% split, but still make 10% or more for the fruits of our labor.
Mm-hmm.
And before you get your panties in a knot about this, I'm talking about getting your buyer to pay this 10% for your work.
The buyer. Yep. The buyer. Yeah.
Right? Now, this is super, 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 super important. This, in case you didn't get it, this is the core of the podcast in Bill's head.
Okay.
Okay, you must pay attention to what I'm going to tell you, because if you don't, you will find out yourself and you may realize it too late. Okay? In today's economy, this is super, super important in today's economy. In October of 2023, the National Association of Realtors, known as NAR, got sued and lost $1.78 billion. Right? They got sued for and lost, and the amount was $1.78 billion.
And that was over real 1.75, 1.7 something.
7.78 or 1.87, one of those, right?
And that was about realtor fees.
Right. So head on over to podcast number 381, our podcast, Flipping Houses for Rookies, podcast number 381, and we explain the entire thing.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, but you're right, because what was happening was they lost because they were sharing fees. There was a buyer's fee and a seller's fee, and there were two. It was a class action suit, I think, in St. Louis or something like that.
That sounds familiar.
And they had a class action suit for 250,000 people that won, because they said that they had been charged 2 fees instead of 1.
And that was just in one state.
Right.
Okay.
and that has since gone up. Well, an update on this is that these companies that were sued, because NAR is the National Association of Realtors, but they went after I think Berkshire, who is
Buffett.
yeah,
Warren Buffett. Berkshire Hathaway.
Yeah, Berkshire Hathaway, yeah. And they also went after I forgot who else.
Was it Remax?
Remax and one more. Mm-hmm. Anyways, these companies settled for millions of dollars, not billions of dollars.
Oh,
millions of dollars, right? And all that's just chatter. Yeah, good that we know that.
Yeah.
But what we need to know is in July of 2024, they promised, or not promised, but in their settlements, they stated that they would change their fee structure. So it won't happen again. Right? Now, by the way, this is one of several class action suits because NAR owns a company called Value.com.
Mm-hmm.
Value.com has either owns or has high stakes in sites like Realtor.com, Zillow, Trulia, Redfin, all the big ones. And what they have been doing is they've been holding the prices of real estate high with these valuations, so that when they comp the property, people go online to check the price of, what the property's worth, the number's high, and their real estate commission gets higher.
Oh yeah.
And the court has proven this, and they're calling it racketeering. And NAR is doing a really good job of keeping it hush-hush because they don't want people to know that, because they would lose their business if they knew that.
Mm-hmm. But
the point is that that's coming down the road. But in the interim, well, just to tell you what kind of people these people are, the president or the CEO of NAR in October of 2023 resigned because he had sexual harassment lawsuits settled. Not against him, settled. In other words, it was in court and he lost. So just to tell you what kind of a people this is, right? So, like I said, that's all chatter, but the important part that our listeners need to understand is that the fee structure is going to change. How a realtor charges for their services will no longer be the same as of July 2024. Now, is it going to be like, flip the switch, it goes from dark to light or from light to dark? I don't think so, because there are 62 or 68 multiple listing services in the country, and each will deal with it separately on their own in the beginning, but you will start to see it from this point forward. And to me, this is the catalyst of everything that I'm going to talk about from this point forward. This is huge because I'm not even reading my notes here. I'm way off script. So, yeah, when I was on my sabbatical for 8 months, right? That was end of 2023, beginning of 2024. I was at a resort, and that resort had national people from all over the country came here, all over the country, and I made friends, several of them out of the country, and one of them was a realtor from Germany, and he was the one who enlightened me on America and real estate, because what he told me is in European countries, sellers do not pay commissions to sell their house. If the buyer wants to buy a house, they need to pay a commission, right? Because the seller has the house. Why would they want to pay a commission? He's like, it's backwards in the United States. It's like buyers pay for the commissions. So sure enough, I start asking around, and he was not the only one that told me. I met somebody from somebody from Italy. They told me it was the same way there, and there was one other country, Yugoslavia or something like that. One of those other countries, right?
Yeah.
And it was the same way. So I soon realized that, that's probably what we're going to do here.
Mm-hmm.
Right? We're going to get the buyers to pay the commissions. Right? So that's going to create an upset because we've had the seller paying commissions in the United States for the last 75 plus years. Right? Now, there's a whole conversation, right? A whole podcast or two that we could talk about just that scenario of what that will do to our economy. I mean, just right off the bat, like, how are the lenders going to lend for this? Right? I mean, right now, the seller distinguishes their price, which encompasses the realtor fees.
Yeah.
It encompasses the closing costs, which is realtor fees, which is inspection fees, negotiating fees, all the fees down the line, right?
Sure.
Are in, and they come out of the seller's end of the deal. And we know that's between 12 and 15%, depending on how savvy the owner is.
Right. So if the seller's not going to pay the commissions, he could drop the price a bit because he doesn't have to pay that, right? For one thing.
Right.
And then the buyer's like, oh, geez, I got to pay more now. So it's got to even out somehow. Like the price goes down a little bit, the commission kind of makes up for it. Something has to happen.
Because right now, technically, if the bank gives what the seller's asking, all that is encompassed in that number.
Yeah.
Now what's going to have to happen is the seller's going to pick a number that doesn't have all those fees in it, and now the bank is going to have to change regulations based on what they will lend for and what they won't lend for. Right? That's not important. My point that I'm trying to make here is that we are on the cusp of real estate sellers recognizing the buyer will pay the commissions.
Okay.
Right? Mm-hmm. And that's my point today. Is that we've talked about this, but I'm emphasizing, I'm like putting a flag in the ground, like on the moon. I'm putting the flag in the ground, and I'm saying this is going to be what you're going to hear from now on.
Well, it is right? July, so we should hear shortly what's going to happen because we haven't yet.
So, exactly. So here's my point. Realtors always sign a listing agreement with the seller. Mm-hmm. Right? Mm-hmm. Then, in fact, if you're a buyer looking to buy a property, they'll sign a buyer's agreement with you. They want to lock you in. Mm-hmm. Then they go find the buyer. So they say, okay, Peter, you want to sell your house? I'm a realtor. Sign this listing agreement, right?
Yep.
And then I'm going to go find you your buyer. What they don't tell you face to face is, Peter, I'm going to go find you a buyer, and they're going to make you an offer, and I'm going to poke at you and pick at you and ask you a bunch of questions until I can get you to come down to the buyer's terms. Mm-hmm. They don't say that, right? Because it now becomes the conversations of, well, Peter, they said they'll do this. What do you think? Peter, they said they'll do that. What do you think?
And Peter says, but you told me you could get me X for the property. You told me this, you told me that. Yeah, but the buyer is saying this.
And the interesting thing in the realtor world is that when they go to school to be realtors, they're not taught how to negotiate. And I just told you the crux of what they're doing is exactly that. Mm. So, to completely 100% kick realtors in the nuts, right? And I don't mean to do that. It's just observation. You get a housewife that has kids in school and she's looking to do something and she's going to become a realtor. How good do you think she's going to be at negotiating? Now, she negotiates with her kids, but
yeah. How good is she doing with the kids?
Right? I don't know I don't know if that's what you want, right? Yeah. Which is why I've always said in the past, if you're going to hire a realtor, ask them how many houses they've closed on in the last 12 months. And if it's not at least 20, I'd stay away.
Yep.
15 at the lowest.
Yeah.
If they're not doing at least one deal or 1.25 deals a month, they're not the right realtor. Right? And this is the reason why, is because they signed a contract, a listing contract. They went and looked for the buyer, but they had no idea, or they should. They don't, though. Most of them don't have any idea what the buyers are willing to do. Right?
Yeah.
So the realtor comes back to the seller, and the seller accepts it or not.
Yep.
And oh yeah, by the way, the seller's locked into this realtor agreement for 6 months. Minimally. Because nowadays, especially Berkshire Hathaway's contracts, they are longer than 6 months. They can go almost to a year with the small writing.
Oh, really?
Oh, Peter, I spoke to John Smith on the phone, and now it's 3 months after your expired listing. I still own John Smith's contact information, and he wants to make an offer, and they want to get a commission.
So anybody that came through in those 6 months, if they show up later, they claim the guy, but not forever. But it could go another 6 months in the contract.
It used to be just that way.
Yeah.
Now what happens is Berkshire Hathaway's contract, which I've recently read, says that, oh yeah, if you do a lease with a purchase to buy, if you do a rent to own, if you do an option, anything like that, we get a commission.
Wow.
They caught on to us.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So this tells me they have a scarcity mentality, because they're worried about capturing income slipping through the cracks. Right? Okay. So the seller is stuck with them. The seller is stuck with them minimally 6 months, often a year. And it's a 5% commission. So that's $5,000 on 100, right? 15,000 on 300, right? 20,000 on 400, 25,000 on 500. Keep going.
Yeah.
Minimum. That's just for the realtor. Then you have your negotiating, you have your inspection, you have your actual closing costs, which is 3%, right? So it's at least 10%. So on a $500,000 house, it's going to cost you $50,000.
Yep.
And oh yeah, by the way, the common house in America right now is $419,000. So that means the common seller's paying $40,000 to $50,000 in closing costs. And if they don't have that equity in the house, where do they get that $40,000 or $50,000?
That's right. They don't. And you can see those numbers if you go online and just look for houses for sale, scroll down, it'll go closing costs. It'll give you $19,000, $40,000, $36,000. It's
on
right
Zillow.
there. Yeah. And that's I think just about 11%. They're being a little conservative, but they're saying at least that, and it's like chunks of money.
That's because they're not including the realtor fees. That percentage is what add 5% to that. All right, now watch this. Because of this turn of events happening with the NAR lawsuit, it puts us on the same playing field, except we have better advantages. What I'm proposing is stop trying to make offers if you're inexperienced. Now, I have preached for 20 years. The only way you make money with real estate is to make an offer. If you don't propose to someone, they're not going to marry you. Right?
Yep.
If you don't propose, if I don't propose to my 6-year-old grandson, hey, what do you want for lunch? I want pizza. Now, how about if we do macaroni and cheese? That's a proposal. Right? Because I don't want to go get pizza.
That's right.
Right? So for 10, 20, for a couple decades, I'm like, the only way you make money in real estate is to make an offer. And now I'm telling you the same thing, except there's a little bit of a twist to it. Right? How do you make an offer? Let me go back to the beginning here. I got to write this some other place so I can read this, because I think this is a beautiful way to say it. How do you lock in your profits before committing to the purchase? How do you make an offer and guarantee that you're going to sell the property and get profits? How do you do that?
Yeah.
Right?
You have to take the risk and the worry and the uncertainty, and what if, like, a leap of blind faith? How do you do that?
So here's how, right? You use an option agreement, right? Which means the seller gives you the right to buy without the obligation, right? I was on a coaching call the other day, and the dude was talking about novations. Now, I was talking about options, and he came right on and he said to me, Bill, I don't understand. He says, I've been trying to study this novation thing. He said, why would I do novations if I can use an option? I said, exactly.
What is the novations? I've heard it too, but I don't understand it.
Yeah, well, we're not going to talk about that. It's not important. Novation means that the technical term of novation, which I don't understand how they're using it, and I'm not going to bring up who's using it. Most people that are in creative real estate know that. But a novation means if I have a lease with you, right, and I decide that I want to go get a subleaser, let's say I want to go get Jack. I want out of the lease, so I go get Jack.
Yeah.
Right? And Jack decides he wants to lease. So I can replace me with Jack.
Okay.
And keep giving you money.
Okay.
The problem is if Jack defaults, I'm still in the loop. So you can come after me because I sublease to Jack.
Right.
What a novation is I come to you and I say, hey, I got Jack here. He wants to do everything that I'm doing, but he wants to take over the property. A novation means you take me off the paperwork and you put him on.
Okay.
That's a novation. What they're doing is they're doing novations for flips, and they're going in and they're getting agreements from the sellers. They're doing renovations, and then they're selling. They go find a buyer, and once they get the buyer, they do a novation. They change the contract at the very end.
Okay.
Right? So that's the way. Maybe I completely have it wrong, but that's the way I understand it, because believe me, I went to try to figure it out, and it's very vague on how they're using it. Very vague. Right? But my point is that an option agreement does all of that a lot better. Right?
And that's been around a long time. Why reinvent something when you got a vehicle that works that well?
There's probably they probably feel there's some legal loophole in there because they're putting money into the property and they feel like they're guaranteeing their money.
Okay.
But let me talk about this. Options. Even Donald Trump does this in his real estate dealings. I read in a Dave Lindahl book that was sponsored and promoted by Donald Trump. Okay. He bought an option on a railroad yard in New York City and waited until the time was right to develop, and then executed the option. Now I want you to think about this. Who's frozen, you or me? Hang on, folks. We got technical stuff going on here. I don't know if it's me or if it's Peter.
I'm back. You see me now?
Yeah. Okay. I wasn't sure if I froze or if it was you. So So here's the point that I want to make. Donald Trump put this railroad yard under option.
Mm-hmm.
It allowed him to do his due diligence on the property. It allowed him to gather investors for his project.
Mm-hmm.
It allowed him to get drawings for his project. It allowed him to make sure, I'm sure things like sewer and water and, zoning rights and, all the things that happen with that type of real estate, right?
Mm-hmm. All the possible hiccups and problems. What if?
He can go find them. And it gives him plenty of time to do that because I'm sure he didn't sign an option for 30 days.
Yeah.
Right? With options, you can sign, we sign them as much as 20 years.
Yep.
Right? As long as the seller is willing to do that. The point is, once he gathered all of his information and he got all of his ducks in a row, he went and got the deal.
Mm.
Or his gargantuan profit, which in this particular case was millions. Because he figured it out before he pulled the trigger. Does this make sense?
Yeah, well, if anything ran into a problem, being an option, he could say, well, sorry, it didn't work out.
Right. So my point, if his due diligence or the money or the contractors or zoning or whatever happened went bad, then the only thing he lost was his nominal option consideration deposit.
I gotta wonder what he puts down on a railway yard.
Yeah. And you just walk away.
Yeah.
End of story. No tremendous loss. Just all upside. In other words, we use $100 on a $400,000 house.
Mm-hmm.
Here's my point: is the buyer decided my loss right from the start. I'm willing to risk $100.
Right.
I'm willing to risk $1,000. I'm willing to risk, maybe Donald Trump put, I'm willing to risk $1 million. I don't know what it was.
Mm-hmm.
But here's the point is, you are complete cause or complete control over how much you're willing to risk.
That is crazy because I know people who don't use this. They go look at a house and they start estimating things and maybe it'll be this much and maybe, and they just don't know. Right. And then we've seen people, they renovate the house, they overdo it, then they go to sell it and they can barely break even. And months go by and they start losing money. And
now,
wow, right?
Let's finish what you're saying because I know I'm interrupting you, but because I'm excited.
Yeah.
Well, here's the thing: is the more you do your due diligence and more you think you have risk, the more you lower the price and the less chance you have of convincing the seller to sell to you.
You have to be so careful. Your deal isn't a deal. The seller goes, nope. I mean, you can't overpay for a property, obviously, but you can't underpay because they're going to say no. What's the number that works that you're safe and the buyer and the seller's happy? That's crazy.
Now here's the interesting thing, right? Mm-hmm. Let's go back to the beginning of the podcast, right? And start winding down, right? Mm-hmm. It doesn't really matter if the seller wants all cash or we'll do a terms deal. Now comes the magic, or part one.
Okay.
With a terms deal, I don't know why I put part one there because I don't know that there's a part two. So with a terms deal, our seller becomes our equity partner for no split. On a terms deal, our seller becomes an equity partner. If they want their full price, we do what we call a slot deal, a sandwich lease option transfer, right? Mm-hmm. And get our buyer to pay us for our work. Mm-hmm. So if the house is worth $400,000, or say $300,000, because I know those numbers. Say the house is worth $300,000, and they're asking $300,000. we can actually show the seller how, if they don't sell today and they wait 3 years and do a lease option agreement with a buyer with no landlord obligations, actually I'm getting ahead of myself, we can show them how they can make more money, right? See, if we don't, this is the part that is the big epiphany for me. This is the part of the podcast where Bill had I saw stars, I got all warm and fuzzy, and I like melted in my chair. Okay? See, if we don't have houses to present to our buyers, we don't get paid. Buyers want a deal financed for them and will pay us to structure that deal for them. Then as the seller gives us more and more equity, we profit higher and higher. So even at full asking price, we're going to get our buyer to go, well, let me just keep going because otherwise I'll skip ahead now. So now if the seller wants all cash, then it becomes a debt partner. That's part 2. So part 1 is they're willing to wait 3 years while we go do a slot deal. 0% equity. So they become a equity partner for the simple fact that we're going to get our equity means how much somebody's going to bring to the table and how much it costs you. It's like a profit and loss statement. It's really profit. Yeah. Right?
Yeah.
So you subtract what came to the table. You subtract what you owe from what came to the table, right? The closing table, right? So on a $300,000 house, we can sell it for $320 because we could do 5% to 10% more, right?
Yep.
So we could sell it for a higher number and get the buyer to pay us, right? So we get the buyer to supply the money for the deal. Oh, I'm ahead. So that's a terms deal. So the equity partner is our seller.
Yep.
And we're getting the buyer to pay our fees or our profit.
Right. And the seller gets some more equity because the deal has more meat in it for him. Even if he breaks even, you said $300,000 house, he owes $300,000. He's going to have to pay closing costs, but not with this deal. He would save the money he would lose and at least break even instead of losing $30,000. So he's doing better this way. So that's why you say sharing, because he does better, we do better.
Right. All right, so let's keep moving.
Yep.
Because I think we're in trouble for time. So now if the seller wants all cash, he becomes a debt partner. Right? We get, now pay attention to this. This is missed by a lot of people in real estate. I told you a debt partner is what?
Well, you would owe him. Like he lends you money, he lends you something, and you owe him.
Right. So where would we find a debt partner normally?
Well, we're usually talking people who lend money to us. Right.
So like a bank or a private lender.
Yeah.
Or so here's the part that confuses the living crap out of me.
What?
Why not get our buyer to supply the money in the deal?
The seller? Or the buyer? The buyer.
Yeah, we're looking for a debt partner, right?
Oh, yeah.
So why not get the buyer to supply us with the money?
Oh.
Right? Let them go get the loan. Let them go get a DSCR loan. Or let them go get a mortgage. Or let them come up with the money. This is what they do in wholesaling, right?
Yeah. So you're talking about the person who wants cash now, the seller who wants cash now?
Yeah, so let me back up because I don't know what I'm doing wrong here. So now if the seller wants all cash,
yeah,
it becomes a debt partner deal.
Because we owe him the money for the house that we're just going to sell.
So we would sign an option agreement with the seller. This is what the realtor does.
Yeah.
It's exactly what the realtor does. You go and find your buyer, and the buyer gets the money. Realtors don't go looking for private money and hard money and all that stuff, do they?
No, the buyer brings the money.
the buyer brings the money. So why can't you do that? What are you worried about money for? Your buyer will get the money.
Well, if you use a realtor, it's going to cost 10, 12, 15%. If we did the deal, we could do it for 5, 8, or 10% or whatever, and we get to keep the money. So the seller gets cash. We owe him the cash, but just like the realtor, we don't own the cash unless we sell the property. We're not locked in because it's an option.
So that's right. And we only have 3-month options, not 6 months, and we don't have all this stuff in the back end. But let's just do the real quick example, right?
Yep.
So you get a house under contract. A house is worth $200,000.
Okay.
You have a conversation with the seller saying, well, it's going to cost you 10 to 15% closing costs. They agree that 10%. You go over the numbers with them, which I'm not going to do today.
Yeah.
You go over the numbers with them. And they agree, yeah, it's going to cost me 10%. So you sign an option agreement for $180,000 because 10% of $200,000 is $20,000. So you sign an option agreement for $180,000. Everyone else, aka the realtors or for sale by owners, are selling that house, advertising houses in the neighborhood for $200,000. Would you agree?
Sure.
So what if you advertise that house for $185,000 because you got an option for $180,000 and you want to make $5,000? Who brings the money to the table?
Buyer.
And you made $5,000 for doing paperwork and finding a buyer at a $15,000 discount. And if you're in a good market, which most people are right now, and has a lot of appreciation, you'll end up with bidding wars and end up with more than $185,000.
True.
So I don't understand why it's hard to find deals unless you have this philosophy. Because any deal works. If the seller wants all cash, then just sign an option agreement, explain the discounts or the closing costs that they're going to have to pay, get them to accept the contract with you. And oh yeah, by the way, when you do the option agreement, all the seller has to do is they can still get a realtor as long as it's after you.
Yeah.
If they already have a realtor, you can't do this. But if it's after you, you just tell them you have an exclusive agreement with me, and that if we sell the house, the realtor can't charge commission. So now the seller has 2 of us trying to sell the house, competing. If they really want to do that. I prefer not to do that. But the point is that they would much rather deal with you than all of the other crap that the realtors make them do. NAR makes them do it. It's not the realtors. Realtors are not bad. It's the system that is funky-do. It's not the realtors. I have a lot of realtor friends, but the system makes them do things incorrectly. Right? Let me ask you something, Peter.
Yes.
If you wanted to buy a car, and the car was, and you wanted to use it every single day to go back and forth to work, would you buy a 75-year-old car?
Nope.
Why?
Well, unless it was some crazy, well-kept, vintage, very valuable car. Well, I still wouldn't drive that one all the time. I wouldn't want to beat it up because it's too old. I want to beat the crap out of it.
So if you're going to sell a house, why are you going to go to somebody that are using rules from 75 years ago? Right?
Yeah.
All right. The whole point is, with an option, we lock up the rights to buy without the obligation, then bring it to the market and show the potential buyers. Right? Have the buyers, now this is good for virtual deals because I've heard so many people, but Bill, I want to start in my backyard and then I want to figure out how to do a deal or two and then I'm going to go over and I'm going to do properties virtually. Except they never do a deal in their backyard because their backyard sucks unless they do it this way, right? Okay. But here's what you're going to do. Pay attention to this. You have the buyers do all the due diligence. So when you put it on the market, which, by the way, episode number 414 we gave you a list of 101 ways you can put a house on the market and do what I'm about to tell you to do right now. Episode 414 is all about that. We covered the top 20, and we gave you a list of 101 ways you can do that. Mm-hmm. Episode number 412 and 413 were 101 ways you can find these deals. So this is kind of like a little mini series of between 412, 413, 414, and 415. Mm-hmm. These are for the people that do not want to spend the money for Creative REI Reply and have it done for them, and they want to do it manually. Here are the manuals. You find a property, you get an option with a seller, you bring it to the market. Right? It could be in California, you live in Connecticut. It could be you live in Connecticut and it's right next door. Mm-hmm. Point is, you're not leaving your computer. You get an option signed with a seller. You put it on the market. You have the buyer do all the due diligence. They'll tell you what it's worth. They'll tell you how good the neighborhood is. They'll tell you if there's crime, if there's baby slayers, if there's rapists. They'll tell you all kinds of things. They'll even tell you how many people have black cars if you want to know, or red cars or purple cars. I mean, these buyers know everything. Mm-hmm. They do all the work for us. Then they give us their offer. This is what I'll pay. Right? You kind of got to give them guidelines, because all buyers want to put down $3,000 to $5,000 and pay $1,200 a month, which doesn't work. But you got to give them guidelines, right? Now that we've talked to the buyers, not buyers, plural, multiple people, you now have a good idea of what the market will bear for that property. This is no different than what the realtor does. Mm.
Yeah.
We then go back to the seller after we subtract whatever cut we want to put in the deal, and we say to the seller, here's what I could do. Mm. Just like what the realtor does. They sign a listing agreement, they go find their buyer, and the realtor signs a purchase and sales agreement, and that's their negotiating factor.
So when we have an option, we have 90 days or whatever days, and there's a number on it, but we're not stuck on the number. We can change the number too, just like they do. Like
if you've got 10 people that will be willing to pay you that number, then you're good. Just do the deal.
Yeah. And if it's less, it's less.
You tested the market.
Yeah, we're not stuck with the number we write on the option agreement.
Now watch this. I have found that we mark up our properties 5 to 10% if we offer financing, mm-hmm. or lease option to buy. And if they want all cash, we need a 10% discount, which is about what the closing costs would be if they were a for sale by owner. Mm-hmm. 15% if they use the realtor system. Okay, so how much does a realtor make?
5%.
Oh, and how much do we make?
10. 5 plus 10. That's almost 15.
So we could easily match what a realtor would charge at 5%.
Yeah.
Often we could push it to 10%. And of course, if we get below market value, it's more than all that, right? Mm-hmm. Last point. Realtors use the MLS to promote to their buyers.
Yep.
The MLS is a multiple listing service. Mm-hmm. Plus, they put a sign out front of the house. And if you read any articles about realtors, they will always, 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 if they tell the truth, tell you that they get more leads from the sign than they do from the MLS.
Oh, really?
If you listen to podcast number 414, like I just talked about, we give you 101 ways to find a buyer or lease option tenants. So no lack of buyers if you do this. Real estate is made to take money out of it, not put money into it. This is a way to do that. This is because your seller already owns the property. The money needed to purchase is in the property already. And when you use our Grand Slam offer script, it explains how the seller can make $94,000 on a $300,000 house if they wait 36 months to get paid and not be a landlord. By the way, I've never done this before. I've always put it behind a paid wall. This is the only podcast and the only time I will say it, so the people listening will get a huge benefit right now. There are many that will not even hear this. But that script is in the description if you click on the link.
Whoa.
The seller actually feels foolish saying no to an extra $94,000 without the landlording by simply becoming the bank, essentially. What we're doing is we are showing our seller how to become the bank, which means in creative real estate, we make our money or our profits by controlling the paperwork that controls the property. We don't make our money off of the property. Fix and flip does that. Realtors do that. They make their money off of the property. Location, location, location. Ugly, pretty. Right? We don't need to do that. What we do is what banks do. We offer payments until paid. And banks only care about the property for two reasons. Number one, it attracts buyers to do their paperwork and get on the hook, right? To pay their crazy fees. That's why when we used to do seminars, I used to ask somebody, how many people own houses? And they would raise their hands.
Yep.
And I would just pick somebody randomly. How much did you pay for your house? Oh, I paid $285,000 for your house. Oh, really? Do you have a mortgage? Yeah. How much are your mortgage payments? And then you would be in the back of the room and you would add it up.
Yeah.
And you add it up over the course of you got a 30-year mortgage, right? Oh, yeah. Well, if you take those mortgage payments and multiply them without the taxes and insurance, you just do the interest and principal, it's 2.5 to 3 times more than what you paid. So you didn't pay $285, you paid $600,000 by the time you got done because you made payments.
That's right.
Right? This is the American way. Right? So what does the bank want to do? They want to make that 2.5 to 3 times money, but they need you to fall in love with and want the house. So the only thing the bank cares about is that the house. The only reason why they even care about the real estate is that you fall in love with it and want it and will go through their rigorous payments. Through their rigorous application and payments. The second reason why the bank cares about the real estate is they want to make sure that when they lend the money, that the house is enough collateral so if you don't pay, they can get the house back and they get their money back. Okay? So that's the only two reasons why the banks they're not in the real estate business. They're in the paper business. They're in the money lending business. And if you listen to me long enough, you should have this epiphany that we do the same exact thing. The house is only the way for us to attract attention to our buyers so that we can get our buyers to pay us our money. So if you don't have houses that you're presenting to buyers, you will never make money with real estate. So what I have talked about today is a very unique way, but very obvious, right under your nose way, to be able to get houses to present to buyers. So maybe you only make $2,500 or $3,000 on a transaction, but you'll have 2 or 3 of them instead of waiting a year to find one that makes $20,000. Stop trying to buy equity. Stop trying to make your profits by negotiating. Just get an option agreement. Do like the realtor. Have 5, 6, 7 houses on option agreements and wait for one to pop. Just like the realtor does on the MLS. They get 5, 6, 10 listing agreements and then one pops and they get a paycheck. Why are you not doing that? Why are we not doing that? You and I.
Oh, we're going to do it after the podcast today. You're laughing. Maybe you didn't hear my voicemail yesterday.
I didn't.
We have a deal.
Oh, good.
Yeah, I'll tell you about it after the podcast. We have a deal.
So my point is that because of the NAR lawsuit, things are a changing, and this is gonna come into our fold where we used to be the third party. You know, the realtors used to call us the alternative. Mm-hmm. We have since COVID become more and more mainstream. 35 to 40%. I don't have. These are just from my own personal interactions with many people. 35 to 40% of today's population that are buying and selling houses do it without realtors. The word is out. You don't need a realtor. They have their places, but they have a 75-year-old car. It's old, and it's great to have, but it's not something you would drive every single day.
Yeah, it actually is 75 years, isn't it?
Yeah.
Exactly. You were making that number up. It's 1949 till today. Mm-hmm. Cool. I thought I didn't get that till just now. 75-year-old car.
Yeah.
Boy, that was a nice long joke there, Bill.
All right. So, Chris, thank you. I saw you said that's interesting, and then he said that's awesome. He's tracking with us today. Thank you for being here. We're going to end off now. Thank you for all your support. Hopefully today is just as I promised at the end of my description, that you'll never look at real estate the same way again. So, you ever think about doing a recording,
Live
Chris? So I record every single one of my seller calls. If you're on my email list, I've sent out the last 3 days. I've sent out an email asking you to do a survey, which is a few questions. If you do the survey, I'm doing a live call next Tuesday night for deal strategies. I'll answer any question you want. And I give you 6 live seller calls. So if you're on my email list, you should go look at those emails and you should do the survey and you will get those live seller calls. There's 6 of them. And not only that, but I have one of them, a deal Peter and I did, which is a subject to deal that people tell me that they can't do subject to deals with lawyers. And I actually recorded my lawyer doing a subject to deal with someone that we did a subject to deal in a lawyer's office, and I recorded the whole thing. It's like 90 minutes. It's my lawyer explaining the subject to documents to the seller. Right? So there's not only are there recordings, but I also put in some of them. If I did like a prospect suspect form, I attached a prospect suspect form so you can see how I am taking notes as I'm talking to somebody. So it's all in that. If you're on my email list, which is flippinghouses4rookies.com, just go to, all you need to do is go to a free stuff page and go there and just get something for free and you're automatically on my list. Chris, because I sent it out the last 3 days, once you sign up, if you send me a support ticket, I will make sure that you, because the emails were the last 3 days, and if you're not on the list, you won't see them. But send me a support ticket, and I will make sure you get it. Okay. All right, Peter. Thank you very much for your time again. As always, Peter. Peter has been a great influence. 414 shows. He's been with me every single week. He never lets me down. He's like clockwork. He always shows up. I don't even ask him anymore. He just shows up. Thank you for all your support. Make sure you go into the description of today's podcast. Click the link, get your free download of the script. Make sure you subscribe to us, you like us, and leave us a comment. And until podcast number 416, I hope you flourish and prosper. You deserve it. Over and out.
Thanks for tuning in to the hottest real estate topics on the planet with Bill and Pete. If you want to continue learning how to buy and sell real estate without money or credit, head over to flippinghouses.club for some cutting-edge real estate wealth tools. Or contact us at info@flippinghouses.club.